Hello, this is Dread, and in today's video topic, this is going to be the half-day update on the Stormweaver Sork that I decided to league start for the Path of Exile 2 early access. So I didn't really have that big of an idea of what I wanted to play, so I messed around a lot. I do actually have an idea of what I want to do in endgame, but for leveling, I was just like, screw it, I'll do anything. So I ended up doing a lot of experimentation, which ended up taking a large chunk of time. But we did manage to get to Act 3, and I'm probably going to be playing a lot more after I get done making this video. It's just, I wanted to like show you guys, hey, this is like what a character looks like halfway through the campaign, because there's a lot of people that are struggling right now, deservedly, considering that this game is hard. By the way, the game is very hard. Even some of the most veteran PoE2 streamers right now are not going as fast. They're taking hours and hours and hours to get through the campaign, and that's not only because, one, it's a new game, two, we're all inexperienced with these mechanics, and three, the biggest and most important thing of all, Path of Exile 2 is fucking huge, dude. Like, it's fucking ginormous. It's like the scale of going from point A to point B is maybe double or triple of what it is in Path of Exile proper. And there's a few things that are good with that and a few things that are bad with that. The good things is it kind of makes it so that there's a lot of action in between sessions of like fine-tuning gear and stuff, because you end up playing a lot more because these sessions are much longer and the sections are much longer. The downside though is if you have a slightly worse build than what you'd want to have. This game is difficult and it will punish you if you have a bad build. I went through multiple different iterations of the build that I'm playing on screen, and I'm still not sure how well it's doing in comparison to other things. There are other builds that are doing pretty good so far. There's like the mercenaries stuff. There's like some fireball nonsense going around, right? Stuff like that. But all in all, everyone's kind of struggling. So I just want to like put it out there. If you're struggling getting through like the first few acts, it's understandable. We all are. That first Act 1 boss was actually very like the Act 1 end boss, the wolf guy. I won't talk too much for spoiler reasons, right? But he was a menace, mainly because the second phase where his corrupting blood, because guess what? A sorcerer doesn't really have that much phys mitigation. So if I get hit by a single source of corrupted blood, I'm probably just going to fall over, which I did a few times, but I ended up getting him. And that's like really what I want to drive home today. Like I said, is we are all in this together. We are all struggling. It's not just you. You're not the only one. If you think that the game is too difficult, that's understandable, because it's difficult for all of us. We're all having kind of a difficult time. Now, of course, you know, it depends on like what you're playing, but for the most part, it seems like everyone's having a, you know, average time like I'm having right now, where I'm doing decent clear, but I don't have like the best clear ever. So let's talk about the build I decided to go with. So right now we're doing some chill freeze shenanigans. That is because the build I actually want to play with the Stormweaver stuff, I can't play it until I have a few ascension points. So we need to play something else. And I decided to play freeze stuff. The idea here is we utilize our frost bolts. We cast frost bolts, and they will go through and they will freeze packs. As those frost bolts freeze the packs, I will have the metagen cast on freeze cast a cold snap. Cold snap either one consumes a frost bolt to create an explosion, or it consumes a freeze on an enemy to do an explosion based on that enemy. And what is interesting is because of the way that the numbers are lined up, every single time I freeze an enemy, I get 100 energy on cast on freeze, and then I spend that 100 energy instantly to do a snap, which means that whenever I am clearing packs, I get a very large amount of cold snaps currently, which is great. It's just a lot of extra damage while clearing. I just throw my frost bolts around, right? And then for single target that kind of took a while to figure out. And what do I mean by that? Well, in the beginning, I was trying to mess around with ice shards, like the freezing shards from the staff implicit. And the problem with that is if you end up with a really good staff, you really don't want to like force your staff to be something that is inferior just to have access to freezing shards, right? Like I was trying to do. Instead, you just want to go with the best items you possibly can, whether that be plus fire, plus cold. I got lucky. I got a plus cold staff early on, then I upgraded it. Now I have the staff I have now, and that's doing great. But I could not deal enough single target with a level 3 freezing shard, so we had to change things up. And I realized it turns out Frost Bomb does a very large amount of damage for its cooldown. So what we're doing with Frost Bomb is we're putting it on a spell cascade. So spell cascade, it will make it so that it shoots extra areas, 2 extra areas around the original Frost Bomb, right? So that's first, that's cool. Then the second part is we're running it with the support Spell Echo. Now, Spell Echo is very weird with Spell Cascade. I'm not entirely sure why it's like this, but Spell Echo is making it so that we get an extra like cast of Frost Bomb, and then we get 2 little extra casts of Frost Bomb from the spell cascade. Then we have the main Frost Bomb. So we have about like 4 Frost Bombs in total every single time I press the button, which turns out to be pretty good. The reason why we're running spell cascade over, let's say, a different like support that could give you more damage is mainly because what's interesting about spell cascade is it has more area of effect. And one of the cool things is if you get enough overlaps with, of course, your Frost Bombs, you can, shotgun an enemy down pretty quickly. And also it helps our clear, because what's really cool is, I don't know if you guys can notice, but whenever I'm fighting a boss and I put down my, Frost Bomb, the boss gets chunked for a large amount of freeze buildup. And the reason why we want to actually apply freeze buildup is something that I actually introduced into the build in Act 3. What happened was I went up against the Viper chick. In Act 3, I'm trying not to spoil anything, by the way, so I'm just going to use like names like this. The Viper chick does a very large amount of chaos damage, and I have a very low amount of HP versus my energy shield. So I have like 900 HP and like 300 energy shield. So that's a problem, obviously, right? When I'm taking chaos damage. Chaos damage works differently than it works in PoE 1. You actually take double damage to your energy shield from chaos first, and then it goes to your HP. So pretty much if any enemy has chaos damage, you can just say goodbye to your energy shield like instantly, which was a big problem because it led to me kind of inting on Viper a lot. And I had to go through and test my build a lot more and try to figure out, hey, what can I do to get more damage? Well, it turns out we can use Comet. Comet is just Meteor, but as like, a cold version. And we put that with like, of course, Unleash and stuff like that to make it do a lot of damage. And what's cool is we freeze the boss so that they don't move. So we have the time to do that massive cast time on Meteor on a single target. As you'll see, when I'm fighting Doriani here, I'll kind of wait for him to stop moving, or I'm waiting for a freeze to build up, and then I use the Meteor to make sure that I hit him and I do a very large chunk of damage. And all that combined led my build to be somewhat viable. Now, this is not probably the best way you could play this kind of build, but it's what I ended up playing. So, and of course, I'm very amateur at PoE 2, as much as everyone almost else is, other than people who played the early access, and even then they played for very small amounts of time. So, I'm seeing other PoE streamers right now, like more veteran people, they're struggling just as much as I am. So that's good to know that I'm at least struggling with company, right? But overall, build's going great. We're going to transition into the quote-unquote real build here soon when I get my second Ascension. The second Ascension, oh my god, dude, I don't know why, but I was on level for the Ultimatum trial, and it was so difficult for absolutely no reason. They do so much damage. I don't know what was going on there. I'm going to try going back there when I'm over leveled just to get my second ascension point, because I don't need my third and my fourth ascension until I get my fourth ascension with the way that I'm going to play my build. So I just need my second ascension, then I can play my build. But uh yeah, the ultimatum ascension for some reason was so difficult. So I decided to just end the campaign, end the first 3 acts. Now, of course, we got to go through Cruel and do all that. I plan on going through and making sure I have all my passive points and all that too. But that's going to be it for the intro here. We're going to go in game and talk about the character more in detail and talk about like specific choices I made. All right, so here we are in game with the character. I'm just going to go over everything. I would make a planner for everything, but I'm way too lazy for that, and I'm way too tired. And also, as well, this isn't a full build guide or anything like that. This is just me talking about what I decided to level with. We have no idea what's really good. We just have an inkling of what could be good. So let's go over the character, shall we? So for gems, right now we're running Elemental Storm. This is important for later. Right now, this has no bearing to the build. So for instance, if you wanted to go for, let's say, Arcane Surge and the Arcane Surge effect, you can go for the LE recoup, you can go for like the shock chance, chill magnitude, stuff like that. You can go for anything else other than Tempest Caller and be just fine. I'm just grabbing it because I wanted to mess around with it. Right now, it's not very impactful with the current setup that we have going, but it will be impactful later when I actually start scaling it and using it. Something interesting to note about skills that you get from your mastery and stuff like that is, as you can tell, I actually have 3 support gems instead of 2, like all the other gems. That's weird. Yeah, turns out you do get extra support gems because as you level, your skill levels up and gets more sockets. So that's something interesting to know. So by the time we get to endgame, I might end up with a 6-link Elemental Storm while everything else is like on 4 or 5 links, which is kind of entertaining. Yeah, I'll go over this eventually when I'm actually playing the Elemental Storm build. Now for Comet, we're just running Comet. Comet is just a decent skill. We're running Concentrated Effect, deal more damage, and then we're also running Unleash to create more meteors, giving us another 100% more damage in theory every so often whenever we cast. Another gem you could use is Hourglass. You could put Hourglass eventually in this because you're only going to be casting it when the target is frozen and you have like an opportunity to cast, but overall, good setup currently. Cast on Freeze, we have Cast on Freeze with Cold Snap and Inspiration. So Cast on Freeze here makes it so that whenever we freeze, we get 100 energy, and the energy maximum for Cast on Freeze for the trigger gem is 10 times 0.12 seconds of base cast time, and right now for a Cold Snap, the base cast time is 0.50. So we actually, I'm pretty sure we get 2 Cold Snaps every single time we freeze something, which is kind of neat. Lots of extra clear with this. We're running Inspiration because I was having mana issues. Eventually, when you get better mana regen and stuff like that, you can dump this for a damage gem or an AoE gem, because Cold Snap ends up being a decent amount of your AoE, so you definitely want to build into it more once you have the opportunity to. But right now, I'm running the less cost because it was expensive. Because remember, you have to pay for every single one of these triggers. They're not free. It just simply means you don't have to cast them manually. Now, Frost Bomb just blew me out of the water overall with its performance. I'm very surprised in how good it feels. Not only does it, of course, give you the cold exposure to give you a lot of extra pen early on, it also makes it so that, you actually can apply a very large amount of freeze buildup very quickly on most enemies. You put down a Frost Bomb, odds are the enemy gets frozen, which then triggers our Cast on Freeze, and those consume the freezes and do more clear, stuff like that. And Frost Bomb just all around just pretty good so far. We also have Spell Echo to get an extra an extra frost bomb, then of course spell cascade for even more frost bombs. Now in theory, if you're only using this for single target, you could actually dump spell cascade and go with something else, but I found that the overlaps end up happening all the time on bigger things, like Doriani for instance gets hit by all of them, so you actually end up with a surplus in damage overall, which is great. Then we have Frostbolt. Frostbolt is just a cold spell that just pierces through enemies, has a decent amount of magnitude for chill and leaves chilled ground, which makes it harder for enemies to come up and punch us. Now we're running Scatter Shot to give it more projectiles, because we want as many projectiles as possible with this, so we get 3 currently, and we're running Deceleration to make the projectiles go slow, because what we want is we want the frost bolts to go and hit the enemy, freeze it, and not have the frost bolts go too fast, because the freezes can fuel cast on freeze and our cold snap to actually cast a bunch of cold snaps targeting the frost bolt or the frozen of freeze on the enemy. Because if you don't know, cold snap can be either cast on a frozen enemy or it can be cast on a frostbolt. So, because you cast on frostbolt to make it explode immediately for a lot of extra clear, which is great. And that's pretty much it for the skills. Let's talk about the passive tree. So for the passive tree, I am not sure how efficient my passive tree currently is. I'm not even using my weapon sets right now. That's because my build is very focused. It's not like as if I'm like trying to weave in 2 different types of damage right now. So we're leaving the weapon sets for now, mainly because the biggest problem I found with it is just finding a second fucking weapon, dude. Finding a second weapon is kind of difficult early on, especially for a caster. So we mainly went for a bunch of crit. The crit will be important later when we talk about elemental storm, but also as well, crit is just good for giving us damage. We're also grabbing some energy shield stuff. Something to note while we're talking about energy shield here. This note here is a wonder star. Not only does it increase the recharge rate, it also makes it a faster recharge. This makes your ES go from kind of like energy you'll have every so often to energy you'll have most of the time, as long as you're not getting hit in a boss fight constantly. So ES tends to be actually pretty good in boss fights because of that, just giving us an extra layer of defense. Other nodes of note, grabbing pen here, of course, grabbing more crit. Going all the way up here, grabbing +1 to all cold spell skill gems. I don't know why this is +1 skill while all these are not. All the other ones are not. I'm not entirely sure why, but pure power is pretty strong, so I guess it doesn't matter. But yeah, another thing I would suggest to focus on a little bit is to get some kind of freeze buildup. This freeze buildup will make it so that our frost bolts will freeze things more frequently, which makes more explosions, of course, and we also want to freeze bosses quicker, so having more freeze buildup is important. Now, if you are well aware of how all of this stuff works, you must be chiding me, Dread, why aren't you running climate change? Climate change not only gives us freeze buildup, but also makes it so that we gain 25% over cold damage as extra fire against frozen enemies, which is going to be most of the time. The problem with this is not only is it not reliable on single target, because you only get it every so often, although it would make our meteor hit like a truck. The problem with it is I'm not entirely sure how that extra fire damage is calculated and the rest of the percent damage, because if I have percent cold and cold pen, do I get the more, does that all apply to the cold damage, to the extra fire? All that is very non-ambiguous. I have no idea how that works currently, so I was staying away from it because of that. But if it works if it works like that retroactively, then it'd be great. But if it works proactively, where you take the damage and then give yourself the 25% and then add on all the benefits like penetration and stuff like that, this node is not as good as you think it is, especially for the 4 node travel. Actually it's even more, 5 node travel for it. So yeah, another thing here, that's pretty much it for the passive tree. It's a very tame passive tree, all things considered. We're just preparing to grab some more crit nodes here. Where are they? Some crit notes here. right here, we're trying to get a lot more crit so that we can actually deal our damage with our elemental storms, but we'll get to that when we get there. But yeah, that's going to be it for the skills. Let's talk about the gearing real quick. This is my staff currently, percent damage, plus levels, maybe cast speed would be great there, but other than that, it's like perfect. Obviously, maybe on a better base with like a skill that actually matters for you. I don't actually use Sigil of Power because it's kind of moot, because a lot of bosses you end up moving a bunch for, so Sigil of Power is not very good in that specific situation while leveling. Helmet here, absolutely terrible, but it does have life, energy shield, and res, and that's all we care about. Trying to cap our reses and trying to get to cap our reses while in the campaign has been very hard, and very hard for a lot of other people too. Right now, I only have, where is it? 8% fire res, 0% cold res, and 44% lightning. And that's like being generous with decent gear. Resistance is very hard to come by currently, if you don't know. At least early on, of course. Then, of course, life, spirit, cold res, perfect. Eventually, we're going to regal these to make them actual items and exalt them. Chest here, I actually corrupted it with the double corrupt, just energy shield HP. Eventually, you'd want something better than this. Ring here literally just has 8 mana on kill. Turns out 8 mana on kill is pretty good while clearing. It's good enough to merit a ring salt like that. Other ring here, just mana regen rate, some res. Why not? We're starving for res. Then gloves here, HP, life gain on kill. That actually felt really good when I finally slapped this on. Eventually, I need to get exalteds to slam this, which we'll get eventually. Then for the belt, we also need to slam exalts with it. I just saw the charm effect duration, the flash charges gained on the flash charges gained belt. So I was like, YOLO, let's regal this, and we got it. So we're doing great with this belt. We just need to simply start spamming exalted on it eventually. Boots here, just movement speed and nothing else. It's because we haven't had the opportunity to slam exalts on it. And at this point, there's no point. We might as well get a different pair of boots, which I plan on upgrading eventually when I have a chance. But that's going to be it for the gear. That's going to be it for the character. There will be a much more in-depth build guide when we're actually playing the end game with an actual build and not just a leveling build. But that being said, this has been Jed. Off to go do something else. Have fun, guys. Bye.